All right, the next supervised profile that I want to briefly cover here is probably the most popular, configuring the Mac's dock. Now, unfortunately, at least at the time of this recording, it's sort of half-baked in Intune. For whatever reason, the settings to govern the position, the size, and the magnification work just fine, but when it comes to defining what's actually in the dock, Intune just doesn't seem to work. Thankfully, there's a great third-party profile editor out there called the iMazing Profile Editor. And it's a free download. You can pick it up from here, imazing.com. And I've linked directly to it in the lesson resources, so you can pick up a copy too if you're following along. I'll go ahead and open this up here. Now, what's great about this tool is that not only does it allow you to configure the dock, it actually supports hundreds of configurations across Apple's different hardware platforms, supporting configurations that Intune just doesn't. I like to use this as a workaround when Intune doesn't support a particular setting, and I found it to work really, really well. And you can just scroll through here and see all the different options that we have. I also like the layout here. It's a little bit more user-friendly than the settings catalog. All right, let's go back up here to the top. So what we're going to do with iMazing is we're going to actually create a profile for the dock. We're going to save it, and then we're going to import it into Intune as a custom profile. So the first thing we need to do is just quickly fill out this general tab. Payload display name, I'm going to call it dock. The identifier we'll put in here something easy. And UID is fine. Put in our organization here. And we're going to say standard Mac dock configuration. We're not going to have to worry about signing, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute. And we don't need to worry about any of the rest of these options here except for payload scope. We're going to make this a system scope. It'll apply it to all users, and we're going to go ahead and set it up for Mac. Now that we have the general tab filled out, it's now time to find our dock configuration here on the left sidebar. So let's go ahead and scroll through here. And these are thankfully in alphabetical order, so here we go. So click on dock here. Talks briefly about what it does, the payload that configures the dock, and it shows you the minimum Mac OS that is required for this to work, which is 10.7. So it goes way, way back. So let's go ahead and hit add payload. Now we need to step through our settings here and configure this exactly how we want our dock to look on our managed Macs. Now the first thing I should mention is that the nomenclature used in configuring the dock. We have static apps and static others, and you can see those listed here. And then we have persistent apps and persistent others. So static means that we're putting them in the dock and they can't be removed by the user. Persistent means that we're putting them in the dock, but the user is free to remove them. So we kind of give them a first sort of recommended set of icons, and they can mix and match them or customize it to their heart's content. Apps is really what we'd call the left-hand side of the dock, where the applications are pinned to, and then others is on the right-hand side of the dock, where you'd have things like folders and documents pinned. Now in this case, I wanted to find just a couple of static apps and a static other. So let me scroll up here to the top here again, and we'll go to static apps. We'll go ahead and hit plus here. Now, one of the things about static apps is that these are tricky and can be somewhat unintuitive because modern Mac OS does a little trickery with symbolic links. And where you think applications live on your hard drive isn't actually necessarily where they live. And let me show you what I mean by that just on my machine here. I'm going to go to the Finder, and I'm just going to go up to Computer. And if I click on Macintosh hard drive, I see this folder that says Applications. And these are all the applications on my Mac. This includes ones that were built into Mac OS, as well as applications I installed. Now, what's actually crazy about this is that they all look like they're together in this folder, but the built-in Mac applications don't actually live here. It's just a symbolic link to where they actually live. And that's actually in Macintosh hard drive, System, Applications. And you can see they're all listed here. So these are all our built-in ones that came with Mac OS. And actually, if we go a step further, you'll see there's one very important one that's missing, and that's Safari. Safari actually lives in System, cryptexes, app, system, applications, Safari. So that's a mouthful. So when we configure our mobile config profile here, we need to give it the full path to these actual applications where they're actually at on the hard drive, not using those symbolic links. So that means we can't just put everything on the dock as in application / the name of the app. The other thing I should mention is that if you didn't know, macOS has file extensions, and for all applications, that file extension is .app or .app. So when we're specifying where the file is, we actually need to also specify .app in that name. So let's go ahead and do a couple of these together. The first one we're going to do is we're going to do Safari. So it's a type of file, and the label we're going to call it Safari, and the display name in the dock is going to be Safari, and we need to select a type file, and we need to give it a path. So we talked about, remember, that crazy path to Safari. So let's go ahead and do a /system/ cryptexes /app /system /applications /safari.app. Now it's really too bad that it's in such a small little window there to see it, to just double check our work, but we'll find out soon enough if we actually use the correct path. Because if we didn't, we're just going to get a big question mark in our dock where the icon should be. And for path type, we're going to go ahead and say path. So there's Safari. Let's go ahead and do another one. This one can be a little bit easier. We're going to say it's another file. And this one is going to be calculator. And it's going to be calculator, and we're going to do file again. And the path this time is system applications calculator.app. And that is a path. And we'll do one last one here. Do a file. This time we're going to use terminal. And it's a file. And the path here is going to be system applications utilities /terminal.app. All right, so those are our 3 icons that we're going to expect to see in our dock when we deploy this. Now let's take a look at static others. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to go ahead and put the applications folder on here. And we want to put the regular full-on application folder here so it captures not only the built-in applications, but also the applications that have been installed on the machine. So this one's actually pretty easy in comparison. The trick here is that instead of file, we want it to list a directory. And we're going to call it applications. We don't need a URL. We're going to skip that. It is a directory, and we need to put a path, which is just going to be /applications. Now, if you notice, I've been using /. On the Mac, it's /, so if you're coming from a Windows world where all of your file paths were backslashes, make note of that because you'll need to use a / when you're specifying these paths on the Mac. I'm going to say it's a path type. And we've got some options here for arrangement and display. We're actually going to go ahead and say display as a folder. So that's the icon we're going to get instead of a stack. And then also how it's going to show. And what we'll do here is just say show it as a list. It's going to kind of be a little bit like a start menu actually, I think, when we're done with this. Let's go ahead and scroll down here. Now we've set our static apps and static others. And that means that they're not going to be able to be removed. And the user is only going to see those. That's at least the expected behavior here. Next up we have size. So this is just imagine these in pixels, and it can range anywhere from 16 to 128 depending on how big we want these icons to be. Let's go ahead and just go for that mid one. We'll do 64. So not the smallest but also not the largest. We want to go ahead and enable magnification. So we'll select that, and then what is the largest we can have the magnification for this? I'm just going to say 96. So we're going to get a decent amount of magnification, but it's not going to be insanely huge. And we have our option here for positioning it on the screen. And I'm going to go ahead and move it to the right. As you've probably noticed, I kind of like having my dock on the right-hand side of my machine. So I'm going to select that. And we're not going to, I wouldn't recommend this for all your users, but for this, in this case, just to show how this works, I'm actually going to disable the ability for the user to move it to any other position. We're going to basically lock it to the right-hand side of the screen. Minimize effect, we're going to use the genie effect here because I think it's the coolest. And then when it comes to animating opening applications, we want to show that, so they'll jump up and down when we're launching them. So we need to check that box. We're going to go ahead and disable the ability to automatically hide and show the dock. So we'll check that one there. We're going to go ahead and show indicators for open applications. That'll give us that little black dot underneath the icon, or to the right of it in our case, because it'll be on the right-hand side of the screen. And then one of the things we can do way down here at the bottom is we can choose to remove non-static apps and documents from the dock. Now what that's going to do is override whatever the user's dock is right now with the one that we're pushing out via our configuration profile. And we're going to go ahead and prevent them from modifying items in the dock. So they're not going to be able to add anything or remove anything. We're basically locking the dock items to what we have specified in static. Now we can scroll all the way down here. This has a bunch of information for hot corners. And what we'll do here in this case is for the bottom left hot corner. So if you move your cursor all the way down to the bottom left corner of the screen, it's going to go ahead and start the screensaver. So that's just a fun little shortcut. That's good for users who maybe need to lock their computer. If they're going to step away for a minute, they can require a password for the Mac to be woken up from screensaver. And that's an easy way to start the screensaver as they walk away. So I like that one. So we've gone ahead and made our changes here, and anything that we didn't set up here is just something that we're going to allow the device to adopt the default settings. So all we have to do here now is go to File and Save, and we're just going to save it to our desktop here, and I'll just save it as doc. Now I mentioned the thing about signing the profile and why we don't have to really worry about that. Now what we're actually doing here is we're using this XML that iMazing creates, and we're importing that into Intune, and Intune's going to be actually applying it to our Macs. So in this case, because we aren't directly installing this profile, we're only importing the XML. We don't need to worry about signing this profile because we're really just going to use it for an import function. We're not actually going to install it on any of our Macs. So we'll leave that as do not sign, and we'll go ahead and hit save. All right, the next step we need to do is back in Intune, we actually need to create a custom profile so we can deploy this. So I'm just going to minimize this for now, and we'll go back into Intune. And under Mac OS, we'll go to Configurations. We're going to create a new policy. And in this case, we're going to use templates. And the template we want is custom. So let's go ahead and select that and hit create. And we got to name it, so let's go ahead and call it the standard Mac dock. And for description, I'll just say standardized Mac dock for staff Macs. And we'll hit next. And we need to go ahead and give it a custom profile name, so I'm just going to call it dock. And we need to choose a deployment channel. We mentioned this is going to be for all users, so we're going to keep it in the device channel here. And then we need to configure, then we need to select a configuration profile. And that's where we're going to go ahead and grab that file that we saved out of iMazing. So we're going to go ahead and hit upload here. And you can see here, this is the XML that iMazing wrote for us, and it's now been imported into Intune. Let's go ahead and hit next here. And let's go ahead and assign it. And we'll assign it to our test Mac group here. We'll go ahead and hit create. And we'll just give it some time now to sync, and then we'll jump over to my Mac and see how this looks. Okay, let's go ahead and just sign in with our user account here. Let's see if we have our new customized dock here. And we do. And hey, it doesn't have any question marks on it, so we have already done that right. So that's a good start. And we can see here that we've got our position here on the right hand side. These are the 64 pixel by 64 pixel icons. We've got a slight amount, but not a crazy amount of magnification, so that looks good. As I mentioned, we've got Safari, Calculator, and Terminal listed here, and no question marks. And I'm sure if I click on Safari, it will actually launch, which is also good. So that's looking good. Let's close out of Safari real quick. On the right-hand side of this bar, or I guess to the bottom of it here, we've got it pinned to the right, and we have an Applications folder, and when I click on it, it's our full Applications folder. It has everything, including the applications I installed, as well as the applications that are built in. So I think this looks really good. And it's a really excellent example of how we can extend the capabilities of Intune using a third-party tool like the iMazing Profile Editor. And this allows us to do a lot of things that wouldn't be natively possible in Intune or really possible at all. Now in the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and shift gears and take a look at supervised iOS restrictions. I'll see you there.